Hudson County View live on Uncut. I'm your host, the guy that tells you 2 and 2 makes 3, your favorite cult of personality, John Arhitis, of course with the latest and greatest in Hudson County news. So like any other week, we have a lot to talk about. First, we had the Jersey City Council meeting last night, and while it was just a 90-minute session, which is really quick for them, we saw them vote on the Water Street redevelopment plan, and also this measure introduced by Councilman Gilmore. That's an interesting proposal asking the New Jersey Department of the Treasury to look at what a 1% income tax would do in terms of revenue generation for the Board of Education. So we're going to tell you what happened there. We're also going to talk a little bit about Hoboken. We're still talking about that potential dispensary over at the former Hudson Tavern on 14th Street. So we have 4 council members coming out and saying they're against the plan and why. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about what's happening in Bayonne. A lot of people calling it Battleground Bayonne these days, right? We're just about a month away, I should say, from the May 10th municipal elections. And there's certainly a lot going on. We had a planning board meeting that went 5 hours, and coincidentally, the council president and mayoral challenger Sharon Ashdodrowski is on that board. And we got quite a few stories to tell about that, so I won't spoil it, but we're going to tell you about what happened at that session. And we're also joined in the studio today with an 8th District Congressional candidate. That's David Ocampo Grajales. So we're going to do that and a whole lot more right after we get back from this break.
Burns Brothers Memorials, Monuments, and Markers, 787 Tunley Avenue, Jersey City. Hudson County's only monument maker, serving all faiths and cemeteries. Design, studio, and large inventory on site. Cemetery inscriptions and custom orders welcome. Burns Brothers Memorials, Monuments, and Markers, 787 Tunley Avenue, just south of Secaucus Road. Craftsmanship that will last for all eternity. Burns Brothers, Jersey City, Albert H. Hopper, North Arlington. Visit us on the net. Consumer Carpets, 3408 Kennedy Boulevard in the Jersey City Heights, your one-stop store for residential and commercial floor treatments, carpeting, linoleum, tiles, laminates, hardwood floors, area rugs, remnants, all major brands, all in stock. Free estimates, same-day installation. Consumer Carpets, it's savings, selection, installation. Credit cards and debit cards accepted. Financing available. Consumer Carpets, price to fit your budget, installation to fit your schedule. On the net at consumercarpets.com. Consumer Carpets, Jersey City, 201-792-2712.
Hudson County View live at Uncut. John Arhitis. As I just mentioned a few moments ago, today I'm joined with the 8th District Congressional candidate, David Ocampo Grajales. Dave, thanks for coming in.
Hey, John, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So obviously you picked an opportune week to join me. There was quite a bit happening in terms of these legal challenges for the 8th District candidates. And we saw 2 successful challenges by the Hudson County Democratic Organization, one against Brian Varela, the other against Eugene Mazzo, booted from the ballot for insufficient signatures. So obviously you were not one of the candidates that was challenged, but what did you think when you saw this all play out?
Well, I think that it definitely changes the dynamics of the race. My initial impression is it's always unfortunate when these things are decided by judges and courtrooms and not voters. But at the end of the day, all I can say is I'm incredibly proud of the work that my team has done to make sure that we do get on the ballot, and we did, and that we got on the ballot in a way that we wouldn't be able to get challenged. And so right now, our main focus is just looking forward towards the election, the primary on June 7th, and making sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to put ourselves in a good position to win.
So it's in the rear view, like you just said, but just out of curiosity, how many signatures did you guys submit?
So we submitted 383 signatures, if I'm remembering correctly. Yep.
Oh, okay.
And we did that in a way where we were canvassing door to door, talking to as many voters within the district as possible. And so we were going about it in a way that was very strategic, essentially going for quality over just quantity.
All right, makes sense. Obviously, that served you well. So today is, of course, the ballot drawing. Let's talk about the heart of the race, though. So we found out during the end-of-year holiday season that U.S. Rep. Albio Sears would be retiring, and we've heard from a lot of outlets, including the New Jersey Monitor, that said Rob Menendez, the son of U.S. Senator Menendez, also a lawyer and a Port Authority commissioner, has been quote-unquote anointed. The HCDO has endorsed him. The Union County Democrats have endorsed him, Essex County Democrats, Phil Murphy. I don't need to go on the whole list, you know. And he just raised $839,000. So look, this is a really, really steep hill to climb. Why did you think this was worth your while?
Well, at the end of the day, that's what democracy is about, right? So you're right. All the headlines at the time were he's being anointed, he's being coronated. And in my opinion, democracy is about battling ideas and competing and talking to voters. And so that's what we're doing. I think that our communities deserve someone who has the same sense of urgency that we do to solve the challenges that we're facing. And I think that to have that urgency, you need to have actually lived with some of the challenges that are experienced by everyday Americans, and I have. I like to say the best experience that I have is growing up working class, because you know, I care about things like healthcare because when my dad had a cancer scare, he had to delay his retirement. I care about things like immigration because I know what it's like to worry about family members getting a knock on the door from ICE. And so there's all these challenges that our community is facing, and they deserve a champion who's going to fight tirelessly for them. And so that's what I intend to do. That's why I jumped into the race. And so, yeah, the endorsements, I'm sure they're nice. He raised an incredible amount of money. That's true. But I promise you, I don't think he cares as much as I do, and I don't think he cares as much as the constituents that are here in the district.
So point blank, do you think this is a winnable race?
Absolutely, I think it's a winnable race. And I also promise you I wouldn't be in this race if I didn't think it was winnable. And so it's going to come down to, I believe we have a winning message. That's in terms of the policies, that's in terms of what people think is best for the future of New Jersey and the country. I think it's just a matter of getting that message to as many people as possible. And so, yeah, we have to get a little bit creative in terms of how can we increase the scale in a grassroots way. But that's where it's been so exciting that we've had dozens of volunteers come out to knock on doors, canvass with us, drop literature, talk to voters. And so we're, I think, exceeding in the metrics that are not the traditional metrics, right? Where how much money have you raised, how many endorsements do you have? But that's all coming along the way, and I think now that the race is a little bit more focused, and in these last couple of weeks, you're going to really see the impact of that.
All right, and what did you raise this quarter that was just about to be reported? I think it would be tomorrow, but you know.
Yeah. So we announced January 18th, we've raised around $25,000, and so in 10 weeks, $25,000 from over 130 unique donors, the majority of which are in the district, in the state. And the average donation is around $100.
Well, Bernie Sanders-like approach.
Bernie Sanders-like approach, and I think, you know, there's definitely been a bit of a learning curve and as we've been getting up to speed very quickly, but that's exactly what we've been doing. And I think one of the key things for our campaign is we're not taking any money from corporate PACs, we're not taking any money from lobbyists. And so I've said from the beginning, I'm always going to prioritize talking to voters versus calling donors, calling corporations, and asking for their backing.
So you were talking a little bit about getting creative, right? Obviously, you're not going to be able to do the mail and the campaign team that like the Menendez camp will be able to. So how do you get creative, and what does that look like, you know, in your HQ or when you're planning, you know, to do your strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. And so my background is working in startups, and so going up against, you know, a big competitor with more money, more resources, more name recognition, that's something that I'm very familiar with. And so you called out mail, for example. Yeah, maybe we can't do as much mail as he's doing. But that doesn't mean we can't go door to door with palm cards and door hangers and do it just the old-fashioned way, kind of recreate what the Postal Service does every single day. It's going to take a whole lot of work, right? But that's what it comes down to, and that's the whole essence of why I'm running in the first place, because I'm willing to put in that work myself to get out there, along with people who believe in what we're doing. And I don't think anyone in this race is going to outwork us.
All right, thanks, David. We're not done yet. We're just going to take a quick break, though. We'll be right back.
Stevens Jersey City Ford Certified Parts and Service, located at Route 440 and Communipaw Ave, is your #1 source for Ford and Lincoln automotive needs. We use certified Ford Motorcraft products to keep your Ford running in top shape. Motorcraft parts are backed with the Ford warranty, which includes a 2-year unlimited mileage guarantee. Our team will have the right Motorcraft part to ensure the best performance from your Ford or Lincoln. You can order in person at the parts counter or online. Let us help keep your Ford or Lincoln in the best shape at Stevens Jersey City Ford.
Good Friend Self Storage in North Bergen, New Jersey is a fully climate-controlled facility equipped with state-of-the-art security, packing supplies, a Refer a Friend program, and multiple loading docks convenient for commercial use. Located just off of Route 3 at 4301 Tunnelly Avenue, Route 1 and 9. Call 201-867-2444 or visit us on the web today. Good Friend Self Storage. Let us be your good friend.
Hudson County View live at Uncut, John Arhitis, and I'm still here with 8th District Congressional candidate David Ocampo Grajales. So, David, so let's talk a little policy. Obviously, I looked at your campaign website, and I know you've talked about a number of issues that progressives identify with. I mean, you've mentioned Medicaid for all. You've talked about the Green New Deal, but tell us what separates you from the rest of the field. I mean, a lot of people use the term progressive these days. What makes you the best candidate, and what makes you potentially the best representative in Washington?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that is a central message of our campaign is that because we're facing so many challenges, people are tired of the kind of blanket promises that they typically get from politicians, right? And so, yeah, everyone in this race right now wants to make healthcare more affordable. Everyone in this race wants to tackle the climate crisis. Everyone in this race wants to lower corruption. The question is, how do we actually get there? And so I think right there is already a differentiator versus the other candidates in this race who, I've taken concrete positions. So for example, in the recent weeks, I was recognized as a Green New Deal champion alongside leaders like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Ed Markey, Senator Bernie Sanders, because I made a commitment not just to refuse all money from fossil fuel companies, executives, and lobbyists, but also to co-sponsor 10 key pieces of Green New Deal legislation within my first 6 months in office. But at the same time, I think one of the things that I get asked about all the time, but it's also just the political reality, it's not always possible to get something past the Senate, right? There's the filibuster, 50-50, and it's possible that if Democrats don't start delivering in a meaningful way, it could be a very bad year in November for Democrats.
A lot of people call it a Republican's wash.
Yeah, so we could even lose control of Congress overall. So I think one of the differentiators there is I recognize that 100%, and that's why one of my priorities in office, regardless of what happens in Washington, is that I'm always going to be connected to the local community. So that means holding town halls, that means still out there talking to voters, either canvassing or on the street, whatever it may be. But I want to be able to essentially bridge the gap between people and their elected officials so that we can tie together these different stakeholders, whether it's grassroots groups, whether it's local governments, whether it's unions and things like that, and really streamline the communication and turn feedback into action on a local level. So sometimes as a congressional representative, that means joining on a picket line, or that might mean shining a light on a local issue, but always focusing on turning feedback into action.
So you're talking about, just to be clear, you're talking about linking Washington, D.C. to Washington Street, or Washington to Grove Street, or to Bergen Light Avenue, so on and so forth, right?
Even more closely than that, right? So I get to speak with constituents all the time, and if you can get it down to the very nitty-gritty of particular developments or particular challenges in terms of traffic, transportation, things like that, where maybe their elected officials aren't listening to them. They've reached out, they've sent letters, they've made calls, but they're not feeling heard, they're not feeling that connection. I want to be the voice that helps them bridge that gap. And so it's about more than just closing the gap between Washington and New Jersey and the district, but also closing the gap here at home.
All right, point taken. So, you talked about the Green New Deal for a moment. If the Medicaid for All bill comes up, I believe you've also said you would vote yes on that every time. Is that about right?
Medicare for All? Yeah. I absolutely would. And healthcare is an issue that's particularly important to me. Like I said, it's very personal, not just my dad, but I myself know what it's like where you get surprised by a medical bill, right? And so we're the only country in the world that doesn't, well, the only developed country that doesn't provide a single payer system. And the result is that we pay significantly more for worse care and worse outcomes. And so all I'm proposing is that we take price out of the conversation with people's doctors, focus on actually preventing and treating diseases and not just wondering about whether or not we're going to be able to afford it.
And is there any legislation you'd like to introduce in Washington, outside of the big picture progressive ideals that we've talked about, maybe something outside the box you'd like to tell me about before you go?
Yeah, so one of the biggest priorities for me, and I have it even at the top of my website, is what I call a second Bill of Rights. And so in his speech, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt spoke about how the Bill of Rights that we had over 200 years ago no longer meet the challenges that we have now. And so instituting a new one and putting into federal legislation that guarantees a right to affordable housing, guarantees a right to self-identify, a right to retire with dignity, and working towards actually fulfilling those rights and putting that on paper, that's something that's incredibly important to me. And more specific to the district, I think there's a lot of work that we need to do on transportation, and not just shipping us off to New York, but also connecting our communities here in northern New Jersey. That is something I'm going to be incredibly focused on as well.
All right, thanks, David. So before you go, quickly, why should the Democratic voters of the 8th Congressional District select you on the June 7th Election Day?
I think that if you want a representative who more closely resembles you and your family and your friends and your neighbors, and who truly cares about what you're going through and is willing to fight tirelessly day and night for you, then I think I'm the candidate for you. So I hope you vote for me, David Ocampo Grajales, on June 7th.
David, thanks so much for joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. We're not done yet, though. We'll be right back.
Newport, the luxury waterfront community on the Hudson River, offers a quality of life you deserve in one of our many high-rise towers. With amenities such as the on-site Newport Path, light rail, Newport Town Square, 3 playgrounds, dog run, upscale restaurants, retail giants like Kohl's, JCPenney, Macy's, and Target. Morton Williams and Acme Supermarket are just outside your front door. A health and fitness center, skating rink, and medical facilities are also on site. Enjoy the New York skyline from our waterfront and various parks. Manhattan is just one pass stop away, or quick ride through the Holland Tunnel. Nursery and private elementary schools all on site. 12-screen movie theater at the Newport Center Mall. Looking to visit? Stay at the Westin or Marriott Hotel. For more information, visit us at newportnj.com. Make lasting memories to cherish forever. It's incredible. It's you, Newport. Live like you want.
Introducing the all-new Ford Maverick. A truck for people who do stuff. And people who make stuff. People like Gabrielle Union.
I make this look good, don't I?
Who haul whatever they want to wherever they want. Like wood to build things made of wood with. And friends to get weird with. It's for long trips that the standard hybrid engine with a targeted EPA estimated city fuel economy rating of 40 miles per gallon helps with. That an 8-inch touchscreen connects with. And any trip that this interior makes more comfortable. But we'll let Gabrielle tell you all about it.
Or I could just tell them it's a Ford truck that starts at less than $20,000 MSRP.
Yep, that works too. The all-new Ford Maverick, built to defy expectations.
Hudson County View live at Uncut, John R. Highness. So let's talk about a little bit about those election challenges I just mentioned when I was sitting down with David. So actually, when the week started, we had 5 congressional candidates, and now we have 3. So there was a challenge from the Hudson County Democratic Organization to 2 candidates, and that was Brian Varela, as I mentioned, and Eugene Mazzo. So at the end of the day, this case with Varela was really interesting. I mean, it was definitely not interesting that it ended up spanning 16 hours going over its signatures and addresses, but the scope of it was wide, as I just kind of touched on. So he actually submitted a ton of signatures, 589, and to get on the ballot for Congress, you actually only need 200. So you would think that this would be a challenge that would probably be moot, right? But at the end of the day, probably about 95% of their challenge signatures went through. They got him down to 181, and at that point he conceded and said that he would no longer be running in the 8th District. And, you know, this was quite a development. I mean, this is not something that people really saw coming. It kind of just happened all in one big fell swoop. And it was a very detailed hearing. It, like I just said, 16 and a half hours. It's, you know, of course, not incorporating a recess here or recess there, but a lot of time was spent on this case for sure. With that said, the candidate, Brian Varela, said during the hearing when he conceded, I want to start off by announcing that I will be withdrawing my candidacy for Congress in the 8th District. I will be back, and I will be coming back stronger. This is not my last day in this field to make a difference in this world. So also, he was gracious to not only the court staff, but also to the press, including myself, who took the time to cover the case. Again, it was a very, very long and detailed hearing between Monday and Tuesday. But, you know, it's in the rear view now. And that was it. Again, just nothing I have ever seen quite like this. And in addition to New Jersey Office of Administrative Law Deputy Director and Assignment Judge Joanne Candido presiding over the case, another person that deserves recognition is New Jersey Division of Elections official Jillian Barbie. She actually had the voter registration log from the state, and she was checking every single one of these signatures with every single address. Obviously, that's pretty painstaking, very meticulous. So again, a great deal of attention was paid to this case, and you know, the judge and this election official really did their homework and their due diligence for sure. And also, you have to recognize Stephen Kleinman, the election law attorney that the HCDO used both in this and the Mazzo case. The Mazzo case was a lot more anticlimactic. He only had 221 signatures. Again, you needed 200. So after a few minutes, it was pretty clear they were going to knock out 21 plus, and he conceded. So we're going to touch more on that in a moment. But Just wanted to read a statement from HCDO spokesman Phil Swabinsky. Obviously, a lot of people had a lot of interesting theories about why we ended up here, but regardless, this is what he said. All petition challenges are based on ensuring the fair representation of Hudson County Democratic voters in the primary for the 8th Congressional District and protecting the integrity of the process. Ballot petition signatures are required by state law to be from Democratic or unaffiliated voters registered in the district, and we must be able to ensure that these requirements are met for each candidate in the race. It's a simple issue of following the law, and we are glad that Mr. Varela has decided to abide by the court's ruling and withdraw from the race. So, with that said, the Mazzo case was interesting because he initially made a contention that the HCDO was in violation of FEC law, Federal Election Commission. Now, what exactly did he say? He said that if you're going to take a court challenge that's essentially on behalf of a candidate, saying this was on behalf of Rob Menendez, a candidate that they have endorsed, you can only spend a certain amount of money. So Amy DeGeese, who brought these two challenges forward, of course she's the chair, she could spend $2,900 as an individual, and the party itself could spend $5,000. However, after making this pretty compelling argument, and he's also a law professor that specializes in FEC rules, so it has a little more weight when he says it, but despite making this claim, he actually ended up dropping out pretty shortly after that. So a bit of an anticlimactic finish there, but again, now we have a three-person race. Of course, we have Rob Menendez, we have David Ocampo Grajales, who of course was just with us a few moments ago, and we have Weehawken teacher and Roseboro Eberhard. So that's on June 7th. We're going to, of course, keep talking about that for the foreseeable future. But the first election that we have in front of us is the Bayonne Municipal, as I touched on at the top of the program. And something that we've been talking about for several weeks now is this, the Peninsula at the Bayonne Harbor. That's the Bayonne Urban Partners Renewal Project. And it went before the planning board really late on Tuesday at about 10:30, as we're coming towards the tail end of a 5-hour hearing. We saw their attorney ask to get consideration for a subdivision. So the reason being, I guess, is really just to get a foot in the door. And, you know, we heard from planning board chair Karen Fiermonte, and she basically said, we don't really hear applications after 9 o'clock. It's 10:30. This is probably better heard, you know, the next meeting. But after some insistence and after some deliberation between the commissioners, they decided that they would hear it. And it actually was probably the shortest hearing on any project I've ever seen, certainly less than 5 minutes. And they approved the subdivision. But if you've never seen anyone apply for a subdivision before, all it means is they're taking a parcel of land, and the land that they own, let me just make sure I'm giving you the completely accurate number, is 539,277 square feet. Now it's going to be divided 3 ways. And the interesting thing is now the special hearing is going to be on election day of all days. The reason that that's particularly interesting is this has become a political football, this election cycle. Politico first reported that Government for the People, a super PAC founded by former State Senator Ray Lesniak, to help Mayor Jimmy Davis get elected to a 3rd term, got a $25,000 donation from Wasim Boré prior to getting put on a planning board agenda. And of course, you know, we heard from the council president last week on why this was interesting. That PAC donated to, paid Sean Cattle a nominal fee, $2,500, before he pleaded guilty to this murder for hire scheme. So this is going to be a really interesting planning board hearing on election day, and also a very interesting city council meeting on April 20th, because Sharon Ashton-Nadrowski has put forward 3 measures that would get a new redeveloper, a request for proposals, as well as rescinding their pilot agreement. Of course, assuming that she could get 3 votes, and that's no easy task, with the council having 3 of the 5 members running on Jimmy Davis's ticket. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're actually going to call it a week. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Have a great holiday weekend.